Hello, good evening, everyone. I believe we're ready to start. So I'd first like to thank you for joining and send a special thanks to all the Philadelphia Ballet board members, artists, students, donors, and subscribers for joining in today. And we'd also like to thank the presenting sponsor for Cinderella, Independence Blue Cross. So my name is Sterling Baca, and I am a principal dancer with the Philadelphia Ballet. And I am here with some very special guests today. Mr. Ben Stevenson, world-renowned choreographer, and one of his ballets, Cinderella, is starting our 22-23 season this year. And I'm also with Don Scannell, who is the stager for the ballet this year. So I'll start off with a little biography read of Mr. Ben Stevenson. Mr. Ben Stevenson served as artistic director of the Houston Ballet from 1976 to 2003. Raising the company from a regional troupe of 28 dancers to an internationally acclaimed ensemble of over 50 artists. For his contributions to international dance, Mr. Stevenson was named an Officer of the Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II in the New Year's Honors List in December 1999. In April 2000, he was presented with the Dance Magazine Award. In July 2003, he was appointed Artistic Director Emeritus of Houston Ballet, and the company's affiliated school was renamed Houston Ballet's Ben Stevenson Academy. Mr. Stevenson, a native of Portsmouth, England, received his dance training at the Arts Educational School in London. He appeared with the Sadler's Wells Royal Ballet and English National Ballet, where, as a principal dancer, he performed leading roles in all the classics. In 1967, English National Ballet asked him to stage his first and highly successful production of The Sleeping Beauty, which starred Margot Fonteyn. In 1968, Rebecca Harkness invited him to New York to direct the newly formed Harkness Youth Dancers. After choreographing Cinderella in 1970 for the National Ballet in Washington, D.C., he joined the company in 1971 as co-director with Frederick Franklin. Mr. Stevenson has received numerous awards for his choreography, including 3 gold medals at the International Ballet Competitions of 1972, 1982, and 1986. In 2018, Mr. Stevenson was acknowledged by the Chinese government as one of the most influential foreign experts in the past 40 years since China initiated its policy on reform and opening up. In July 2003, Mr. Stevenson assumed the artistic directorship of Texas Ballet Theater in Fort Worth, Texas. So with that incredible biography, I think we're ready to start a bit of a interesting and I'm sure to be incredible Q&A series here tonight. So Mr. Stevenson, you have choreographed many distinguished versions of full-length classics from Cinderella, Swan Lake, Romeo and Juliet, Sleeping Beauty. What is your secret to great storytelling through dance?
I wish you'd tell me. I don't know. I think I've just done a couple of more, actually. But I think somehow I was lucky enough that when I was with the Royal Ballet, the 3 choreographers at that time were Sir Frederick Ashton, Sir Kenneth Macmillan, and John Cranko. So somehow having 3 fantastic people who are all great storytellers and working with them, I think somehow anyone, I think other people who work with them too, that sort of rubbed off. It gave you a sort of a know-how into sort of trying to do, a full-length ballet. So my first original full-length ballet, I did Sleeping Beauty first, but my first original all the choreography was Cinderella. So it's a long time ago. I was telling you, Freddie Franklin was one of the Ugly Sisters. And when I did it for American Ballet Theatre, Ang Hal was a wonderful gesture, one of the best I ever had. So it was great.
That's wonderful. Yes, we were talking earlier about Frederick Franklin because I used to dance for American Ballet Theatre, and I remember him there. What a great gentleman! And yes, you worked with our wonderful director Angel Correa. So yes, you said you received inspiration from these incredible storytelling choreographers. within that, how do you, when you first approached on your own a creation, what was your creative process outside of the inspiration you got from these choreographers before you to create what you've created?
I learned very quickly that you can't do Swan Lake if you don't have a Swan Queen, so somehow you work with who you have. And I was very lucky because Cinderella being my first, I had the perfect cast. I mean, Freddie Franklin and was one of the ugly sisters, and he was fantastic. Kirk Peterson was the jester, original jester. Gay Fulton, and Ivan Nagy too, and his wife Marilyn Burr were original people in it. So somehow, doing my first ballet, I was lucky enough to have people that inspired me. Often people say to me, I love working with you, Ben. You inspire me. And I say, that's because you inspire me. It's like when you teach, that you don't want to teach people that are boring. So somehow the people that students that inspire you, or the dancers that inspire you, you want to work with them. So it's like playing tennis. If you hit the ball, you want to get hit back. So somehow it's important to inspire one another. The dancers, when you're doing a new work, the dancers, you have to be inspired by them. In return, that makes you inspire them.
Yeah, so that's very interesting you say that. So Miss Dawn Scannell is here. She is staging the ballet for us. And I have to say she's done an incredible job. And, one of her jobs is to, I think it's always interesting when I'm in these processes because you have the choreography and your signature style. Yet also when you, as you just said, when you choreographed, you were feeding off of the dancers. So there's kind of that middle ground of, you have to set what the choreography is and what the unique style of Mr. Ben Stevens is, but also bring out something unique in the dancers you're setting on. So Dawn, how has that been a challenge for you, or an exciting process since you've been here with us?
Working with the company has been great. I'm lucky. It's Ben's ballet. And when we were younger, Ben did all these characters for us. He would get up and do a violinist, or he would get up and do Cinderella herself, or he would do the prince, and he would do each and every fairy. And it was really important that he made us understand and fully grasp who we were supposed to be. It wasn't just about the steps. We had to get past the steps and tell the story and create the atmosphere. And so having all of that education and hearing Ben constantly, ballet after ballet, it's in me. I can hear him. I can still hear his corrections to me and him saying, "Dawn, darling, less is more." And he's absolutely right. And so that is easy. It's the easy part to give that to you guys because he gave it to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just the messenger. I mean, he's the creator.
Yeah. Yeah. So that leads me to another question I had for Mr. Stevenson is, when you're creating a piece or hiring dancers for your companies that you've run, what do you like to find in a dancer? What inspires you about a specific dancer? Is there something that you prefer, or have there just been many different styles of dancers that inspired you over time?
Well, if I'm auditioning people, I'm from the old school, so you have to remember that. And when you think of people like Ulanova, Galina Ulanova, Margot Fontaine, Carla Fracci, all those people, Marcia Heidi, none of those people were great technicians, like 32 double fuetes and things. So somehow at that time, it was more about the acting. And those people were international stars. Sometimes people say to me, she wasn't very good, was she? She couldn't get her leg up high. So once you've seen Sylvie Guillaume or someone, then suddenly the mood changed into, it was more how high you could get your leg up than whether you could act or not. So somehow I always look naturally for someone who I think has a physical facility, but at the same time has something to say. Someone has a personality. So often you see dancers now who can do a lot of steps, but they've got a paper bag over their head, you know. So somehow I look for someone who has something to say, because it's a performance in the end, you know, not just steps.
Yes, yeah, I mean,
Cool, my art, wasn't it?
yes, this is an art form, and the technique is a language. It's words and sentences that we put together to express something for the audience. And especially in the ballets that you choreograph, they are stories. So I can see that that would be incredibly important for you to see in a dancer. So you were a dancer as a principal with the Royal and English National, and obviously you have become an incredibly successful choreographer and director. Is there something that you wish someone had told you when you were younger that could have helped you before you started your career in dance or choreography? Did you find similarities, or are they just completely different ventures as an artist?
Someone should have said to me, "You're young now," because somehow you don't appreciate it when you're young. You don't use those years. Also, I shouldn't have left the Royal Ballet. Someone should have said to me, "Don't leave the Royal Ballet," but I did. And although in doing so, I then became a teacher, choreographer, and all that. So somehow it worked out for me. But if I'd wanted to have continued to have a good dancing career, then the Royal Ballet would have been the place to be for me to be. But I was young and foolish.
Now, how about you, Dawn? I mean, as you've had an incredible career as a principal dancer, and now you've been a rehearsal director, you've been a stager, you've been a coach, you've been a teacher. Is there something, same question, that you feel would have helped you as a younger person moving into those processes? And also, what is the difference between being just a dancer and, you know, at the front of the room?
I think for me, and Ben was there during those years, so Ben, you can probably really speak to this. When I look at back now, I needed to just get out of my own way. I needed to just get out of my own way and get on with it. And, you know, when you're a teenager and just turning 20, 21, there's some of the other things going on. But if I remember back, there were some other people around me that really had it together, and I just didn't. And but there were a lot of people in Houston Ballet at that time that were older than me and Ben, and ballet mistresses, ballet masters, principals that took me aside, and they were like, "Look, you're talented, you need to pull it together, or you need to try and do this, or you need," I mean, I'm being honest, you know, just looking back and going, wow, those were years that for me, I needed to listen a little bit quicker, you know. As the years rolled on, though, I understood, and I started to learn, wow, less is really more sometimes. And knowing where that fine line is, and really watching Ben, watching how the staff coached us, it was super important to just absorb that and go, yeah, I get it now, and not fight it or resist it or you know, not apply it the way they were wanting us to. The difference between being a dancer and a stager, or a dancer and staff, is you're a dancer, and Ben, you know this, Sterling, you know this, you come in, you get your schedule. Your schedule is posted on the board. You know when you're gonna do your opening night, you know when you're gonna do your soloist work. It's done for you. You have to make sure you sleep well, eat well, get to the studio on time, do everything you're supposed to do. Now, you have to be a year ahead. You know, directors, Ben, Angel, directors everywhere have to plan a year out. Writing down a ballet to be able to stage it, having all of that information way ahead of time to prepare the dancers. So it's a much bigger picture. It's a much broader picture, but it's more fulfilling. I think I loved dancing. I loved learning, but watching other dancers get it is probably the best part for me.
Yeah. And I have to say that you've done a great job really bringing the best out of everybody from top to bottom. So yeah, I guess my next question, I'm really enjoying this. This is kind of personal for me because my very first season in the company back in 2016, my very first performance was the prince in Mr. Stevenson's Cinderella. So now these years later, I'm getting to revisit the role, which is very exciting. And, you know, I've been through so much in life, been through a pandemic, and kind of can see things from a different light, and, you know, notice things I didn't notice before. And so I guess my question is, I can feel the kind of imprint of you, Mr. Stevenson, on the piece. And this is a question for both of you. What do you think audience members can see specifically about your Cinderella, which by the way is my favorite version, than say if they went and saw your Sleeping Beauty or your Romeo and Juliet or Sleep, you know, etc. What do you find very unique about how you choreograph this piece?
For me, I think I was very lucky because it was my first full-length ballet that I choreographed. I was directing the Harkness Ballet in New York. So that's back in 1968 or whenever it was. And so I had a 10-day rehearsal period to put it on. And so what I did was I had two dancers I had a girl in the company, Jane Miller, her name was. She was my first three Preludes girl. And she and I got together and I worked on the pas de deux with her. So I thought, well, I'll have an idea what I'm going to do with those. But I had no idea about the waltz or the dragonflies or the fairies. And so I got there and I hit the road running. And in 2 weeks, I'd choreographed it. But then the company went on tour for a week. So I had to sort of wait there. And then they came back. And then that next week, we were in the theater putting it on the stage. So it was very quick. And I only had 27 dancers in the company. So I had 6 couples in the waltz. And so I was able to enlarge it as I got a bigger company. But it was a very special time to do that. So I think it was all that when you do something for the first time, you know, you think, how did I do it? I don't know. But somehow I did, with the help of Jane Miller and also the dancers in the company. And I had Ivan Nagy and that, who was wonderful, Desmond Kelly, and Gay Fulton, who was fabulous, Cinderella, and Carmen Mate, who was there. Somehow I had good people to work with. And I was lucky because sometimes when you're a young choreographer, people don't respect you. They think you're going to beat you up and, you know, leave you in the alley or something. But actually, it was a good experience. Something I have great memories of that time. And I was lucky to have the stuff. I don't actually remember what I choreographed a ballet, and at the end, I think, where did that come from? You know, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. I'm not saying I have a triumph every time, but if I do something, at the end, I think, where did that come from? Somehow it comes from somewhere, but you don't really know. I don't go home and jump around in the bedroom to the music and think this is a variation someone's going to do. I go into the studio and push the dancers around. So, and that doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. You know, you can also do variations yourself. But I always think choreography is like being a tailor. You're making a suit, and if it doesn't really fit well on the dancer, you know, you can pull them in different directions, but in the end, the whole idea is to make them look good or better, you know. I don't know whether that answers your question or not. Took me a long time.
But I knew this was going to be good because we're all talkers, which is great.
Wow. Have to get the hook.
And what about you, Don? What do you find very unique about this production of Cinderella? What can the audience maybe see when they come to the performance?
They're going to see characters that are living people, that these people in the company, every time I feel that I've seen Cinderella, or I've been lucky enough to be a part of Ben's Cinderella, the character, they need to be inhabited. So they're gonna see very strong personalities on the stage, very, they'll be able to follow the story. He's constructed it in a way that you're looking at what you're supposed to be looking at.
Mm.
And the first act, there's gonna be some surprises and funny things and, you know, sad things and really hilarious things. I remember sitting in the studio and watching Ben laugh at some of his own things that he created, and we thought, oh, well, he's happy with that. That's good. That's good. He was happy with that. You know, the one thing about Ben's ballet is that you had to be somebody. You had to understand. You can do an arabesque 5,000 times in ballet, but it has to mean something every single time in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think audience is going to love this. Just love this production.
That's wonderful. So this brings me to another question I have for both of you. Mr. Stevenson, do you have a favorite ballet that you've created? Or are they all equally special?
I've been asked that so many times. I always say I haven't done it yet, but I think there are certain things. There are certain ballets I'm proud of. I'm quite proud of For la Song that I did, and also the Mozart Requiem, which I did for 11 boys, and I'm very proud of that. And I just did that in Cuba with the Cuban company, and they have great guys there, and so that's something I enjoy. It doesn't mean because I'm proud of it that everyone loves it, but I think it's been successful. For la Songs is successful. I think Three Preludes was my first original piece, even before Cinderella. When I went to Harkness, my first piece I did was Three Preludes, because there were two people in the studio that weren't working and weren't in any of the ballets. So I decided to do something for them. And that turned out to be well, and it's been done all over the world. So those are things I'm proud of. But, you know, you can't demand other people like your work, because we all have different opinions. People go and say, wasn't that fabulous? Other people go, oh, it was all right. Other people go, oh, it was hideous. So somehow you get different opinions from everyone. But the pieces I would choose would be Three Preludes, Mozart Requiem, and For la Songs.
Wow. What a incredible plethora of work. So as a dancer, Dawn, in your illustrious career, do you have a favorite role, something that's very special to you in your heart?
I think, you know, it's funny. And I mean, like Ben's been asked that, I've been asked that before, but if I really remember back, it was everything that we were doing at the time, we were lucky because we had Ben made sure that the rep was very balanced. We had very classical, we had very contemporary, we had very neoclassical things, and he made sure all the dancers were fed all the time. And so I ended up feeling like whatever I was getting the opportunity to dance at the time was my favorite. It was like, some things were easier than others, some things were much harder than others, but I loved the process. So for me, there wasn't just one special thing, it was all of it. One ballet, I had to sit in a box and help people get undressed, and then the other ballet, I was in a blue, you know, I mean, I learned so much from all of the opportunities, and I think that's why I do what I do now. So there wasn't just one. I did get to dance Ben's For la Song, and I loved that. I thought, wow, I didn't even see that coming. I remember that. And even Three Preludes, you know, I just thought these are stunning things to have a chance to do. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
I have
so
add to that is because one time, Margot, we were talking about doing different steps, and she said one of her things was she'd find a step she hated, and then she'd work till it became her favorite step. which I thought was funny.
Well, I guess I need to work on Gargaglia.
Yeah.
Yeah, most do. That's the one. If our viewers out there do know what a gargaglia is, it's where you start in your fifth position and you brush one leg and you do a double rond de jambe en l'air, and then in the air you do the other one the opposite direction and then close in fifth, and it all happens in one jump. And most of the time it just kind of looks like you jump up and go. So it's a very difficult step to execute cleanly. So
I'm sure you were a great sugar plum fairy.
I'm still working. I'm still understudying. Maybe next year. Okay, it looks like we're getting a bunch of questions in the chat, which is wonderful. I have one more question before we move to that. So we really focused on Ben as a dancer and as a choreographer, but let's take a second to talk about directing, which I feel is also kind of a different thing. And you've been incredibly successful doing that, bringing Houston Ballet into one of the most recognized companies in the country. Can you speak on the steps you took to grow Houston Ballet to that level from where it was? What opportunities did you capitalize on?
I was very lucky when I went to Houston because the board there wanted a ballet company, because Ballet Russe had gone there every year. So sadly, a lot of those board members who've died now, but some of the old board members there, they really wanted to have a ballet company. Harriet Bath, who was a great friend and lady who's sadly not with us anymore, they were determined to have a ballet company. So somehow when I went there, I had a board that wanted something. So they sort of encouraged me really to sort of, and the first thing I did there was Peer Gynt, which is not a title that you'd choose necessarily, because it's a hard, if you did Pinocchio or, something, the Queen Elizabeth II story, people would know what you were talking about. But Peer Gynt, people go, what's that? It is a very famous play. And so it also is one of my favorite ballets I've done, by the way. But I went there and I wanted to do that. And that was the first thing I did. And one lady on the board said, I would sponsor a ballet of Ben's choice. So I did Peer Gynt and she paid for it. So, I mean, that was, what else can you want than that? So somehow it made me feel self-important, I suppose. But so somehow it's just, you can only go step by step. And I think, whether it's your company there or the Texas Ballet Theatre now, we all have striving to do something. It depends on what's going on around you. It doesn't take one person to make a ballet company. It takes everyone really, but it takes particularly the board and the artistic director, the administrator. So somehow everyone working together. It's not always possible to have that. The people don't always get on together. That's a hindrance. But I think I was lucky to have those things in place when I went there. And Gianno Cerrone, who came as our executive director, was the best one there's ever been and was totally amazing. And so somehow he played a great part in my growing the company really in Houston. And I think also, you've got to have great marketing, great development, that, everything you do is out there in the newspapers and everything. So somehow all those things are important. So somehow I was a part of the artistic part of growing the company. And that was a privilege. And I had a wonderful time. I have great love for Houston Ballet. And I think it's a wonderful company. And I was glad that I went there at the time I did. And I want to thank all those people for helping me grow it.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I just because I have pride here. Everything you said, I just want to say for our viewers, I really feel like, in a way, Philadelphia Ballet has a lot of those ingredients that Mr. Stevenson just talked about. We have a really strong board, strong leadership, a lot of the right people in the right place at the right time. And like you said, Mr. Stevenson, I think, all of us continuing to work together will continue to grow this organization. So it was really nice to hear that, because I think we're on the right track. So we just got to keep moving forward. So now let's move on to, we have plenty of questions from our audience. So we'll move to that, which is great. Let me try to find the first one. Okay, so the first one is from our wonderful executive director, Shelley Power. She says, Ben, being familiar with your sense of humor, what do you attribute to your ability to get that into your ballets to make them so fun to watch?
I put feathers in the leotards. That makes people when they put them on. No, I don't know. I mean, I think I don't consider myself to be Benny Hill, so I'm not a very good jokester, perhaps in that way. But I like to work with humor. I think it relaxes people. I think people come in the studio. I mean, I'm always amazed now when people come and say, "Oh, Ben Stevenson taking rehearsal," I'm terrifying. And I think I can remember thinking that when I was working with Freddie Ashton or someone. Why are they thinking that about me? And I think it's got a lot to do with you're an old man walking in the studio. People go, oh, and it's more frightening, I think. I think little children don't like old people as much as they do young people. Unless you're a really good grandparent, I suppose. But I think that I like to work with you. Because of that, I think working with humor makes people think, well, you're not such an old gorilla as they think you are. So somehow, I think that probably is why I do that, because I think that in the summer school, people come, and look terrified. You're taking the class. And then if you can make them laugh or say a few things, you don't want them to become too familiar, but you want them to be relaxed and to be able to, hear what you're saying and do it. I don't know whether that's a good answer or not, but.
I think it was wonderful. Okay, on to the next. We have from Kenneth Simons. Mr. Stevenson stated that he preferred dancers with personality over just good technique. What are any suggestions for a young dancer with good technique to learn personality, or is it not a learned skill?
I think you can. I think you can. That is, I'm sure with your artistic director, with your ballet staff, I'm sure when you're doing ballets like you've been working with Dawn, somehow I think you can take that on. Don't think it's not important. Just think, I just did 32 double tours and I'm going to do 33 and then I'm going to retire after I've done that. Think, can you do, I always make a lot of students with this. I say, just walk across the room. And they don't, they're sort of like trying to be ballet. I said, I don't want a ballet dancer, just walk across the room. That they find it so difficult to do. And I said, now walk across the room, you're drunk. And I said, now walk across the room and the floor is 180 degrees and they jump up and walk. So somehow they start laughing. But it's important, those things. When I was at school, Kasavana, can you imagine, who was Nijinsky's partner, was my classical mime teacher. And my contemporary mime teacher was someone called Joyce Matchett. I thought Joyce Matchett was an idiot. But now I realize how brilliant she was. She would say, lay on the floor and be bacon frying in a pan. And you go, and she said, now be a rubber hot water bottle falling out of bed. I thought, why aren't I doing Swan Lake? But somehow this really made you drop any frighten you had doing anything. So in the end, you thought after you did that, you could do anything, So all those things I think are important. It's not just classical mime. And, and then I'm a huge fan of Meryl Streep. and I think she's a great, great actress. I personally think, again, other people might not agree with me, but I think somehow seeing people who are great artists like that in movies, you know, Sophie's Choice or The Iron Lady or the things she's done, I think that acting is acting. And so somehow you can be inspired by that too.
Oh, wonderful ideas and tools. You know, I'm on the faculty here at the School of Philadelphia Ballet, so I may use a couple of those. I'll always give credit, but those are some good ideas to get kids more out of their shell.
All right.
Anyway, okay, so the next one, Renee Daly. Has the choreography been changed over the last 50 years?
Yes, a lot, particularly the pas de deux. Not so much a couple of the fairy variations. The waltzes stayed the same, but more people in it. The Ugly Sisters have more or less stayed the same. Or I did try and do different variations with them once, and I went back to the originals. But the pas de deux changed from the beginning, and I think they're better now. But it stayed like this for 40 years anyway, as they are now. I think when I went to American Ballet Theatre and everything, I think this is the same choreography I did there.
Oh, very interesting. So another question from our executive director, Shelley Power, which I think definitely relates to the times in which we're living now. Ben, can you talk about casting and how you were one of the first directors to cast African-American dancers like Lauren Anderson in major roles?
Strangely enough, I just got off the phone right before this interview with someone called Keith Lee. And when I went to the Harkness Ballet, when I first came to New York, I have to try and, it's a long story, I have to tell it quickly. When I left Festival Ballet, which is the English National Ballet, Beryl Gray took over. I was the ballet master. She wanted her own ballet master. I was out. And so a friend of mine who was a choreographer in New York said, why didn't I go there for have a vacation? Well, they didn't have much money, but it was only $30 to fly to New York round trip then. So I went to New York, and Professor Yoakum was the dean of dance at the High School of Performing Arts. She came to dinner and I was invited to teach there. In that class was a young, but a 16-year-old boy, black boy, and amazing, Keith Lee. And Keith Lee was also a scholarship student at the Harkness Ballet. So he went back and said he liked my classes. So they invited me to go there. And in the end, after 2 weeks, Mrs. Harkness invited me to become the director of the Harkness Youth Dancers. So that was luck. And I had always admired her for just choosing me because I was hardly Baryshnikov. I didn't have a big name or anything. And also Keith Lee got this white person a job really with the Houston Ballet, with the Harkness Ballet. And I just talked to him now because I'm trying to get him to do a ballet for the company here. And he had his own company at one time. He became a soloist with American Ballet Theatre and has remained a great friend of mine. Lauren Anderson and several people at the Houston Ballet, Dawn Scannell, are, you know, people now, it's like it's only just happened, but people have been trying to give opportunities to African-American dancers. People often say to me, I've been on a committee with a lot of African-American teachers and people of color, I believe we can say, and they say, you know, Ben, why don't you have more Black people in your company? And I said, I'm not looking for color, I'm looking for talent. So if I get Carlos Acosta, and who was another person I brought from Cuba, who became a superstar, I think, and Lauren and different people, Lauren's still hitting the headlines with her new play that's just gone on. So somehow they were talented people. It was a pleasure to work with. It wasn't anything to do with their color. It was to do with their talent.
Wonderful. And I would like to say that I'm very proud that our organization has really been at the forefront of today's diversity, equity, inclusion, and access discussions. And so we're really committed to continuing that work moving forward. So there's a couple questions that are related, so I'm going to skip to one and then go back. Carolyn Newsom, what is it that you expect from the board to give the artistic side of the company the environment to grow and shine?
I think the board really has to trust the artistic director. And somehow, I mean, he can't make too many mistakes because it costs money. But at the same time, it's horrible if you're in a situation where you have, say, like an artistic committee. And the artistic committee, the artistic director goes to the artistic committee, and then he says, I want to do this. The board say, no, I don't want that. I want this. I want that ballet. I want that. So somehow the board become the people choosing the ballets and not the artistic director. Also, I think that the board should say, oh, I saw this fabulous ballet in New York. You should go and see it. But I don't think they should choose it. But this, I'm being very tough on this one. But I think that in Houston, I was told what the budget was. They'd say the budget is this much. So I had to go away and come back with ballets that would cost what the budget was, or not to go over. And so somehow it seemed to be a very good, and it made me think of the choreographers. I mean, I was so lucky in Houston. I had Kenneth Macmillan and the fabulous Christopher Bruce as my resident choreographers. And Kenneth was my artistic associate, and Christopher Bruce was the resident choreographer. So somehow that was major. And I think somehow got the board going. I think the fact you're doing these things, Zoom things with people, I think is good because it gets people involved in that way too. But I don't know whether I answered her question or not, but I think it's difficult for the artistic director has the worst job actually. I mean, I wouldn't like to have to raise money either, but at the same time, what you put on the stage is what is your company. So somehow you have to really trust that person to find new choreographers, give choreographers in the company a chance, who's going to go on the stage and thing. There have been situations, not in your company and not in mine, but in the past, where someone in the board has said, you know, I want that girl to dance the leading role, and I will give $500,000 if you'll put her on. So somehow you have to say yes or no to get. Then if you say no and you don't get the $500,000, then you're hated by everyone because you didn't get the money. But you'll be hated by the dancers because you didn't put them on. I'm sorry, I go ramble on. Must be my old age.
It's all very informative. We're loving it. So a question for Dawn from Shelley. Dawn, how do you keep all the roles straight in your head as you're teaching them to the company and 50 dancers?
For this ballet, oh, okay. Well, I grew up with this ballet. I grew up doing several different roles in it, but I also sat in the studio and watched Ben rehearse every single fairy, every single dragonfly, the wig maker, the dance master, the dressmaker, and he did all of those roles. So I still have those pictures of Ben in my head, and dancers that I looked up to doing those roles as well. I mean, as I had to learn as things that he changed over time, I had to kind of get up to speed with those things, or the waltz here and there. It's not, I don't know, it's not that hard. I guess it's like if you're in 3 ballets a night, 3 completely, and if you have to do 2 different spots in one of those ballets and 3 different spots in another ballet, dancers just learn how to keep you shift into that you shift into that. So I think the education of being a dancer first helped me a lot. And I'm interested. I'm interested in all the different roles. I'm interested in having very strong characters. His choreography has to speak. So to me, it's important that everybody that comes on the stage. So I'm looking for that. I'm trying to help bring that out. I don't know. It's a good question, but it's not that difficult.
Can I add to that? Sorry to butt in, but I couldn't have a better person putting on my ballets than Dawn, because she was such an animated actress, dancer herself. But at the same time, I'm sure, and I think Dawn should be doing this, as she does it, she should be seeing what it is and adding information of her own so that it's always fresh. It's not something we did 20 years ago, but she might say, I think it might be better if he laughed there or something. I mean, so somehow, not only she has to put the ballet on, but you have to make it become alive again, new and fresh. And I'm sure that's what she's been doing.
Yeah, I can definitely second that. I think we've been incredibly lucky to have not only Dawn, but also Angel, who has a history at the ballet, in the room. And they're just both such incredible actors. So when they give the notes, you know, they can go from being the prince to being Cinderella and then being the stepsister, you know, like that. And I mean, I think I've seen Dawn probably act every single role in the ballet, like spot on. We should just do a Cinderella with just Dawn and Angel.
Ben, do you mind if I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
This afternoon, Angel and I were in the studio, and there was a moment, and he was on one side, person writing down the notes, and I was on the other side. And it felt like, just for a moment, the way he said something, he looked a lot like you. He did something, and I just thought, oh my gosh, holy smokes. And it felt very weird. It felt like being home with you.
Wow.
And he could see you in his mind as well. He could hear you, because you made special things for him too. So he was contributing those thoughts and feelings, and that was great for me, because I'm an Angel fan myself. So I just thought, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. We're old. We're adding to this now. So, but it was all coming from the same place. So it was great.
And
I'm curious that Angel and I are not the ugly sisters. I could be the much older one, a vicious one, of course, and he could be the nice one,
He was
young
talking
one.
that you had done at Ballet Theater, Ben, when you were working with them. He said, you know, at this moment there was the music stops, and it's during one of the Ugly Sisters variations, and you told one of the boys to just go like that during the silence, and it filled the space. And I started laughing because I was like, yeah, I can see him doing that. I mean, it was perfect. So you touched us all.
Yeah, and now I'm getting that from you guys. I think that's such a beautiful aspect of this art form, that you have to have the in-person. It can't just be on paper or on a video. You have to have that person nurturing in the studio.
As the artistic director too for a company, it's just another story. You know that Kevin McKenzie, I gave him his first job when he was 17 in the National Ballet in Washington. And I was just having dinner with him, and he said, I always remember the first day, we were all so terrified. The director, we all sat on the floor. He said, sit on the floor. And you made each of us say our names and where we came from. And one boy in the middle, Raymond Serrano, his name was, said, what are we doing this shit for? He said, Kevin, I know. He said, why don't you get on and do some ballet? He said, you're doing this. I said, calm, wait. I said, I'll get you at the end. So I went all the way round. And so then I came back to him and said, and where do you come from? He said, oh, somewhere. And I said, how much would it cost me to get you a one-way ticket? I said to him. So he said, Kevin said he remembered that. I don't remember, but he did.
Wow, what a story. So we have 5 minutes. I'm going to combine 3 questions, and I have a quick question to start. David Chambers, our Chief Advancement Officer, has asked, is your 4 last songs performed with a live orchestra and soprano soloist?
Yes, it has been done that way, and with tape, but with orchestra and soloist. So is the Mozart Requiem.
Excellent. Okay, so these are the ones that are kind of related. Angel sends big hugs and kisses. And he's asking, how has dance evolved since he started dancing? Is it worse, better, or just different? But that also relates to two other questions that we got from Kenneth Simons. In today's TikTok world, do you see the future of classical ballet as bright, stable, or getting old? And also from Alyssa, thank you for this wonderful discussion. What do you see as the broader role of ballet in today's society as a form of art or entertainment, especially in today's digital age? And with the rise of street styles of dancing, what makes ballet stand the test of time? A lot.
I think one of the most important things is to keep going. I don't think we should ever get rid of classical ballet, Swan Lake and all that, because do we want to get rid of La Boheme and Man and Butterfly? No. Do we want to get rid of Beethoven? No. But I think you have to go on growing the art form and thinking of new and interesting things that would introduce. I was thinking the other day, if I could do a program to get young people to come, what would I do? And I'd get 3 young choreographers to do one to Lady Gaga music, one to Elton John, and one, as I'm a friend of Lyle Lovett, I don't even know who Lyle Lovett is, and one to Lyle Lovett. So somehow, as he's a good Texan, I would sort of think it would people might say, I don't know anything about ballet, but you know, the music, I want to go and see that. So somehow then when they go, if the choreography is great, catchy, then somehow we're growing the art, but also enticing people into the spider's web.
Excellent advice. So we have a couple minutes, just because I started my career, actually my first boss was Mr. McKenzie, kind of with an era of dancers who didn't have social media, and now I'm in thick of social media. I mean, have you seen a change in how the dancers work, their attention span, you know, just the way that things are interacted? Because I've definitely seen kind of a different generation, and I've been kind of right in the middle.
I personally don't like social media, but I think it's very important because it's the younger generation, and we have to get them on board with classical ballet and the arts. We need that. And so somehow it's something they all adore, but somehow to me, it's personally as an old person, you know, it's all gets so complicated, TikTok and all these things. In the end, you're just going crazy. How do I do that? How do I do this? You know, I have to get my 7-year-old neighbor to come in and show me how to do the stuff. Just getting this interview today, getting on the phone, I was so nervous about, you know, getting the link and being able to do all that. I was amazed that I actually got on. So somehow it's probably because I'm a dumb old person, but it's not easy when you get past 80.
Well, I think we're all nervous. We always get a little nervous with Zoom, but we made it on. So, wow, this has just been incredible. So I think our time is just about up. But I really appreciate your time, Mr. Stevenson, and Miss Dawn, the wonderful Miss Dawn. And I'd especially like to thank everybody who joined us tonight. We've had a great time talking. We hope you enjoyed our discussion. Again, we'd like to thank our presenting sponsor of Cinderella, Independence Blue Cross. And after all of this, I really hope that you'll come see Cinderella. We are performing it October 13th through the 23rd at our beloved Academy of Music. We have many talented casts, so I hope you'll come and enjoy all of them. And yes, please enjoy. Oh, there I am. Please enjoy your evening, and we hope to see you at the theater very soon.